So the most common use of REST is over HTTP. So we can actually leverage the HTTP methods for CRUD operations. So in this diagram here, or this table actually, whenever you send over a POST request, then this can translate to the CRUD operation to create a new entity. When you send over a GET request, this can translate to the CRUD operation for reading a list of entities or a single entity. For the PUT method, this is for updating an existing entity. And then for the HTTP delete method, this can be used for deleting an existing entity. And we'll actually write the code for this in some of the following videos where we'll build a REST controller, and then we'll have support for these given HTTP methods, and it'll translate to the appropriate CRUD operations that we'll perform on our database. Now let's just kind of take a look at these HTTP methods that we'll send back and forth. So we have this idea of our client application, and we also have our server application. So the client's going to send over REST requests to a server or a CRM REST service. So we'll send over this HTTP request message that'll have data going across, and then our server can process it, and then our server will send back an actual response, an HTTP message response. Now, let's go ahead and kind of break this down a bit and see what's in the request message and also what's in the response message. Now, the actual request message has three main parts. It has a request line, header variables, and message body. So the request line has the actual HTTP command or method. So this has the GET method or the POST method or the actual delete method. The header variables has the request metadata, so additional information about this request. And then the message body has the contents of the message or the actual payload. So if you're adding a new entity, then the actual contents of that entity will be in the message body as JSON. And we'll see examples of this coming up in some later videos. Alrighty, so that covers request message. Now let's look at response message. And response message has three different areas also. So it has a response line, header variables, and a message body. So the response line, that's the actual server protocol and status code. So here the status code could be one of the HTTP status codes like 200, 404, or 500. The header variables, that's the response metadata. So this is the actual information about the data. So the content type of the data, if it's XML or if it's JSON, the size or length of the data. And then there's the message body, so the contents of the message. So if you said, hey, give me a list of all customers, then that list of data will actually come back in the message body as either XML or JSON, depending on how the server is configured. Now for the HTTP response, you can send back a status code to give information about the status. So you have codes in different ranges. So anything in the 100 range, that's for informational. The 200 range is for success. The 300 range is for a redirection. The 400 range is for client error. And then we also have the 500 range for a server error. Now you've seen some of this before. So for the 400 series, if you had to access a secure server, it would send back a 401, meaning authentication required. And then also you've all seen the 404 error, the dreaded file not found error. And then in the 500 series, you've seen this one also, right? The 500 internal server error. All right, so these are basically status codes that's returned by the server as part of the HTTP response. And then we also have the idea of MIME content types. So this is basically the message format for the actual payload. And so it's described by a MIME content type. So what does MIME mean? Well, MIME stands for the Multi-Purpose Internet Mail Extension. Blah, a mouthful. So you'll normally hear folks refer to it as MIME. So again, it simply describes the actual content or the format of the message being returned. You have the basic syntax for it. You have a type / a subtype. And then here's some examples. So you can have a text / HTML or text / plain. So this is information that's returned back to the client, and then the client can render it accordingly or process on it accordingly. So some examples here. If you return back text HTML to a web browser will render that based on the HTML tags. You pass back text plain, the web browser will simply just show you the plain text in the browser. That's just for a web browser example. You can also make use of RESTful clients for that. And so in particular for RESTful clients, we can pass back application/JSON. So we can tell the client, hey, we're returning JSON data for you. Or you can have application/XML saying, hey, this content coming back is XML. And again, the client can process on it accordingly. Alrighty, so now we also need a client tool. So this client tool is something that we can use to send HTTP requests to the REST Web Service API. And then it'll get the response and we can actually view it there in the tool. So there are plenty of tools that are available like curl, which is a command line tool, Postman, a GUI tool, and a lot of others. So in this course, we'll make use of Postman. So Postman is a really popular tool that's used for real-time projects. And as a screenshot here says, Postman makes API development simple. Okay, it's very simple, very easy to use, and a lot of people like to use it. So it's very common. You'll see it on a lot of projects. So you can actually download Postman from this website here, getpostman.com, and they also have a free developer plan. So it's a free piece of software that you can make use of for testing out and accessing your REST applications. All right, so I want you to go ahead and install Postman. So you can get Postman for free from this website, getpostman.com. Choose the version for your operating system. Now, I won't personally walk you through all of the installation steps. It's really simple, really easy to install on your computer. So in the following videos, I'll assume that you already have Postman installed, and then I'll show you how to use it for testing out. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with Postman. So in the previous video, you should have installed it already. Now we're simply going to use it and just play around with some of the basic features. So let me go ahead and fire up Postman and get it running on my computer. Now on the first screen, they may prompt you to log in. It's not a requirement to log in or create an account. At the bottom of the screen, they have a link here that says, take me straight to the app. So just go ahead and choose that one, and you don't have to give any user IDs and password. You can simply use the app as is. Alrighty, so they'll probably take you to the main screen and they'll give you like this template or launch wizard or whatever. This is a good starting place if you'd like to use it. We're not going to use it here. We're going to go ahead and use just the basic application. So I'll go ahead and close this window. Alrighty, so just a quick tour of the application. At the top, you'll have your HTTP request, and then at the bottom, you'll have the HTTP response. So here I'll kind of start at the top with the HTTP request. You can use different HTTP methods, get, post, put, so on and so forth. We'll use some of these later on in the videos. You can give the actual URL. You can look at authorization items, headers, and body if we're using like a post and so on. And we'll use most of these features as we go through the course. Alrighty, so I'll click a new tab here. So I'll just hit the plus right here at the top and open up a new tab. So let's go ahead and swing back over to our browser. And in our browser, what we'll do is we'll actually go to this website, jsonplaceholder.typicode.com. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So here's a URL. Again, they have more endpoints that we can use to actually access some REST services. And the reason I want to try this one out is because they have, I guess, more complex responses coming back with nested objects and so on. So the one item that they have here is the /users item that's going to return a list of users. We can actually access this link directly because most web browsers are smart enough to render JSON content. So we can see this long list of all the users here, and we're viewing this directly in Chrome. You can do a similar thing in Firefox or another browser. But I'd like to test this out in Postman also. So I'll go ahead and just copy this URL. And then I'll swing back over to Postman. And in this new tab that we have, we'll just paste in that URL that we just set up. All right, so I have a get on /users. And then I'll do a send. I'll send over this request. And then I get a response. So this is very similar to what we saw in the browser. But the nice thing about using Postman is that you can get additional data more than what you can get in the browser. So here we have the status code of 200. And we see the big long list of everything that's coming back. And also note here, we have this user list of users. They also have nested objects, and we saw examples of nested objects earlier in our course, and a nested object within a nested object. Okay. So you can have a lot of fun there. So just this big long laundry list of all the users, and it's set up as an array up top on line 1 with a square bracket. And we can also see that the headers here, all these different headers that were set by that given server. And again, we click the content type of application/JSON, and just tons of other things out there as far as additional metadata or headers that were sent back with this given response.